Hi, I'm Shane.
And I'm Alex.
And this is Race Per Minute.
Welcome back to another launch reaction for the 2022 season. We're up bright and early this morning to talk about the Mercedes W13 release, as they decided to do it 9 a.m. British time. So there was no dallying about. They were straight into it. Now, I don't know. I don't want to open too negative. I don't know if it's because it's first thing in the morning, or if I have just F1 launch fatigue, or just because I'm not a Mercedes fan. But I was pretty bored by this launch reaction. It did seem to go on a bit, and it was a sort of your standard sort of conference room affair. So I wasn't super enthused by this, but we did get to see an actual car, which was good. And obviously we saw Lewis Hamilton, who we haven't heard from for a long time. And it was presented by Naomi Schiff, or Skiff, I'm not quite sure how that's pronounced, but she's a W Series driver. And Natalie Pinkham, again. Somebody else has got Natalie Pinkham to present for them. It was a bit weird hearing her say, we really want this. Here at Mercedes, we're going to do that. And it's like, well, you were saying that with McLaren the other day. So just sort of hype person for hire. And obviously we kicked off pretty straight on, because this was live, I think, as well.
Yes, yeah.
Which is an interesting decision. Because there was already, right from the off, there was a mention of the sort of shadow of Abu Dhabi, despite an 8th Constructors Championship. And they had a sort of Toto had a brief response to the FIA statement on Michael Massey and the rule changes, which obviously indicated that this is obviously happening more or less live. So, Shane, what did you think of this nearly hour-long presentation from Mercedes?
Like you said, it was quite a long one, and it did seem to go on quite a bit, but there were some key moments that stood out for me in that initial presentation with Toto, Lewis and George. And firstly and foremost, it was great to see Lewis and George together side by side as teammates, instead of George being in that reserve space, or being like in that Mercedes development program or young drivers program. It's just good to see them as teammates. And they actually had a conversation about how they had a photo taken probably 10, 15 years ago of George being, tiny and his idol being Lewis Hamilton. I think it's great to see how he's followed his dreams, and now he's racing alongside arguably one of the best drivers in Formula One. But what stood out for me was 8 titles, but past achievements mean nothing. We start from zero, said Toto Wolff. And the whole "we start from zero" was mentioned throughout the whole launch. I think it was 3 or 4 times. It was mentioned in the cinematic clip towards the end, and it was overlaid a couple of times. But yeah, starting from zero, because there's nothing from the previous years which they can take forward into the next championship apart from the will. So it just goes to show how much has actually changed going into 2022 season. I know we've mentioned it in the podcast before, but completely different set of regulations. And again, we've got not a strange looking car, but a differently designed car, which I'm sure we'll talk about later on in the technical part of this. But yeah, I get what you mean. Maybe it was because it was 9 o'clock in the morning and I was a little bit tired, but it did seem to go on for a while. But overall, I didn't think it was too bad. I thought it was just a little bit long.
Well, Mercedes obviously perfected the art of under-promising and over-delivering. It's very much been their messaging for since their inception, really. Which is nice to hear. Obviously, it's you don't really want to sort of make big claims about what you can do and then discover you get into the new era, and that's not quite the case. And Mercedes have been on the other side of that, where they've come into a new era and they've been absolutely dominant. And there is no guarantee that will happen again. So we'll see when we get there. We also had a couple of other things that did stick out. We had Hamilton obviously returning. But really, he's just sort of reminding us of the obvious. I mean, he never said he was going to stop, and he just took some time to look after himself. I feel like any level-headed, reasonable person knew that was the case. There's an awful lot of excitement and hyperbole around Hamilton sort of not saying anything for a long time, but we're not obligated to hear from the man or poke into his life just because the job he does is in the public eye. The season ended. He wanted some time to himself. Pretty straightforward, really. He does what he wants. He's not obligated to present to people in that way. So,
and I'm just going to interrupt you there if you don't mind. because I've listened, like you do, to multiple other podcasts throughout the off season, and so many of them were like, "Is Lewis staying? Is Lewis going? Who's going to replace Lewis Hamilton?" You won't hear that from Race Per Minute because that's not what our podcast is about. We deal with facts. We deal with what's happening here and now. We don't speculate on what might be happening or is Lewis going, because it's just it's not true, is it? That's why you would have heard it from us either through Twitter or on the podcast, because we only deal with what we factually know, and that was. Well, he signed a contract. He's gone quiet, probably because he's dealing with him. You know, he's dealing with the consequences of Abu Dhabi by himself, and he just wants a bit of downtime. And he's back, but he never left, like he rightly said. So, I just wanted to make sure that people. This is our podcast, and we don't want to speculate about that kind of stuff. So it won't be happening here.
Yeah, it just comes down to bit of common sense, really, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like it's just the news would be if he broke his contract, because he already had a contract for the new season. So, that would be the news. But about whether or not he's going to leave, I mean, yeah, it's just sort of idle speculation, really. Well, I suppose we do speculate on some things, but it's
we're not creating drama, are we?
No, I don't really want us to sort of court drama or controversy, because Formula One is dramatic enough as it is.
Yes, exactly.
So the need to sort of add this layer of artifice in case somebody isn't excited enough. I've never quite understood that. It's motor racing. You stick a camera at the track and I'm interested. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
It's as simple as that. So I don't really feel the need to hyperbolize it in any particular way, because it does that for itself. Moving on anyway, so we have, we talk a bit about Hamilton, then we get to hear from some children, which is good for them, I guess.
The real young drivers of the future.
Hearing from the kids. It was nice that Hamilton encouraged them to do well in their education, do well in school. That's good advice, because it's easy to talk about how they want to focus on their racing and all the rest of it, but also they don't just need to be good drivers, they need to be good people, they need to be well-rounded individuals. Like, that is as important as everything else, because Formula One, and indeed being a racing driver, and indeed any professional endeavor, is not just your skills in that particular thing, but your ability to relate to people, your emotional intelligence, your self-awareness, your understanding of the world around you. That's all important stuff. So it was good that he emphasized the education. And that also was followed by a bit of talk about the desire to get more diversity in the sport.
Yeah.
I liked that Toto emphasized that they're not trying to hit a particular quota. They're encouraging young people into motorsport and engineering, not just on the basis of their ethnicity, but also their sort of socioeconomic background. And I think that's important, because diversity is diversity is people's life experiences, their different values, their different knowledge. It's not just what they look like, it's also where they've come from and what their life has been like and how they think. And so it's good that they sort of emphasize that as well. They're not trying to just meet some set number and say, that's it, we've done it, we've solved racism. It's a little bit more complicated than that, and Mercedes obviously understand that, so that's good. And then just a lot of chat about, what do you think about the new season? All the kind of questions that we've heard so far. I think that's a disadvantage of doing a release later on, is that you end up hearing a lot of the same stuff that we've already gone through, but they're wearing different team colours.
I think it was, they obviously asked George and Lewis individually what their 2022 goals were, and just touching on it briefly, Lewis turned around and said he hasn't set any goals because, he has no idea what the car's going to be like going into the new season, but everyone is working towards that ultimate goal of the 9th Constructors' Championship in a row, which I thought was really nice. He's looking at the bigger picture, hasn't even mentioned his own desire to win the 8th, so he's just thinking about, he's just talking about the 9th for the whole team, which is obviously really important. And equally, George being brand new to the team, is he brand new? Because he's hung around for a while now, and he said
he's
that
a Mercedes
basically,
boy, isn't he?
He has been for a while, but he said it's definitely easier knowing the faces you're working with. He's excited for the new season, and he said feedback to the team about the car is going to be so important. It's going to be a development race from the first race all the way to the last, and I think Lando said exactly the same on at the McLaren launch. Toto was very restrictive. I don't know if restrictive is the right word, but he was very level-headed. He said, first of all, we have to hope that we have a competitive car. We can't just assume that our past success is going to earn us the right to be at the top of the field into the new season, you can't assume that we're going to be fighting for the title. So his first hope for the season is that they have a fast car and a car which both their drivers are able to drive at the top of their ability.
Yeah, and they like you say, the whole thing had a restrained vibe to it. So that's kind of nice, really. It fits that what we've come to expect from Mercedes, really. Then we got to the car. Really, it was after that. After I was sort of talking to the young drivers and that, there was a rather long spin around the car and dramatic
really
music,
wasn't there?
And it was all in obscured lighting as well. So it was kind of, they were showing it but not showing it. It was a bit sort of odd. Just kind of wanted them to get on with it, to be honest. But we did get there in the end, and they showed the car and a little bit of a chat with the drivers and the technical staff, talking about what's changed on the car. And the car that we see here, the car that we saw in the launch program itself, seems to be a sort of mix of the real thing, because I'm pretty sure the front wing is the show car front wing. But then we also got renders which look different. So we kind of maybe have to piece parts together from both of them to get a sense of what the car might be. Anything in particular sticking out for you in both this render and the real thing?
Now, I can't remember whether it was the render or the real thing, but the nose and the front wing, the nose was quite long itself, but the front ring seems to get really slim and tight towards the actual nose itself, whereas other teams have kept that quite wide and quite bulky. Mercedes done this clever front wing where it's gone really thin to connect to the nose cone. But of course, we don't know whether that's going to be true to life, and I don't think we'll be able to establish whether it will be until later on today, actually, because Mercedes have got their shakedown at the Silverstone circuit. A bad day for it, because we're currently dealing with a bit of a storm in the UK at the moment, so I'm wondering how much running they're actually going to do. No, Mercedes, they'll go for the full 100 kilometers, but I think at that point we'll be able to see what the car is more or less looking like towards the start of the pre-season testing, because why would they run a slightly different configuration just for the shakedown?
Yeah, the wing is an interesting one because it's got these much more triangular end plates in the render, and the one in the show just looked like the show car one.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah.
And we just have these like wavy floor bits on the launch program car, kind of similar to what they had last year, where these like sort of wibbly wobbly bits going along the floor at the edge. There's also this sort of dip in the rear wing as well, like a sort of double dip at the back.
Yeah.
Obviously to do with channeling the air, perhaps off parts of the back of the car, etc. So these sort of serrated edges on the end plates of the front wing as well, which is interesting. I don't think we've seen something, can't recall seeing something quite like that from another team.
No.
And yeah, just that sort of more pulled back arrow-like shape to the wing as a whole, really. The whole thing looks a bit sort of thinner and sharper on the renders than what we've seen from other teams. But then, of course, they also emphasised the two technical guys. They also talked about a lot of changes under the hood as well, of course, and that's where a lot of the differences will probably be.
And what stands out quite dominantly for me is how tightly packed or how slim it gets towards the back of that car. You can see a couple of bulges on the render where there's obviously clearly like bits of the ICU or the power unit just like, or pipes just like sticking out, but they obviously put the engine cover over it. It's really tight. They've almost vacuum packed it as tight as possible because that's the kind of way they want to go. In the show car, it's a little bit more smoother and it's a little bit more bulky, but actually in the render, it looks like it's all being sucked in and it's running rather tight at the back to, well, hopefully aid aerodynamics. And, we'll never know, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's got a very large floor on the renders, doesn't it? It really juts out from the actual main part of the body. So, we'll only have to see when the photos. I imagine it will just be some hybrid of the renders and the real thing.
It's good to see, though, the real car, because Red Bull still haven't shown us their car at all. We've not really seen any photos of it on the track as well, because I believe they've got their shakedown either today or tomorrow.
I think they've had it, because there's some kind of like blurry photo
is there?
going around.
Oh, okay.
And it's obviously you just can't see anything in it.
Can't see anything.
So it looks like there's some kind of image that's going around.
But they've kept it still quite under wraps, haven't they? They've done a good job of
keeping it very quiet.
I wonder if we'll see the camo livery back in pre-season testing for Red Bull, because they've been very secretive about their car. Whereas Mercedes, I think they've been secretive, but in a completely different manner, because they've got like two slightly different design concepts. They put one on the actual vehicle itself and one on the render. And, who knows what we'll see later this afternoon when they do their shakedown.
Right, shall we have a little chat about this livery then?
Yes.
What do you think of the new return to silver? We both thought it would be black, but
we did.
But it is actually silver. So,
yes. Like you said, it was such a long reveal for the car with all like the strobe lights and the lighting effects. It took me a while to figure out. I was like, is it silver? Is it black? Is the back black, or is it the front silver? I'm not quite sure, but actually, no, the majority of it is silver. So the silver arrows are back, and I quite like it. Don't get me wrong. I loved the black livery. I thought it stand out. I thought it was mean. I thought it was aggressive. But there's something about this. It makes me feel like we've gone back to 2014 and 15 again, when we had the silver arrow, and I quite like the look of it. I'm glad they've kept the red at the top and on the end plates on the inside and a bit on the rear wing. And the Mercedes, can you call it a star? The inside of the Mercedes logo? They've got that printed on the back as well.
Three-pointed star, yeah.
That's the one, the three-pointed star. I quite like that. I think it looks quite smart. All in all, I think it's a very good livery. And hopefully it looks... I think the render looks better than it does on the show car. Maybe that's just because of the studio lighting or how it's designed, or how it's meant to look in a render. So it'd be interesting to see what it looks like on track later on today. But all in all, a pretty good livery.
Yeah, it's like Red Bull. They've got a well-established look now, and the black livery was the outlier in a way. They obviously did that for they obviously did that for sort of special purposes, and now this is the return to what we would expect them, I suppose, really. Although, I anticipated that they would keep going with the black livery. I thought they would establish that as their new look.
Yeah.
But no, they've gone back to silver. It looks good. It's an established look. It's I like it seems like they've gone for a slightly brighter red than they had before, which I think is better. It kind of pops
it looks
a little
nice,
bit
doesn't
more. I do really like the wheel covers. I hope those are the sort of wheel covers they're actually going to go for, because quite like that style. But otherwise, not a whole lot to say, because it is just sort of this familiar look of the Mercedes.
It's your classic Mercedes, isn't it?
That we've come through, and it looks good, and it's sort of a simpler looking one compared to last season, because obviously it was black, but also they had this whole thing going on the back with all the AMGs and the new bit of red at the top, and there's a little bit too much going on, and this feels like a little bit sort of back to basics, but just a refinement of that. And yeah, it looks good. It's a classic look. It's a now iconic look, and that the iconic look of that is obviously enhanced by how dominant they've been in the sport. So it remains to be seen if this return to the silver arrows also means a return to the sort of ascendance of the silver arrows at the original change to the turbo hybrid era, where Mercedes just got it like that. They just clicked straight with the regulations and were already a long way ahead of everyone, and everyone just was catching up with them, basically.
Yeah.
So will they do it again? Who knows?
It's exciting times.
I must say I hope they don't, because I think it would be, if Mercedes show up and just blow everyone away again, it'll be like, oh, here we go. Another 7 years of Mercedes dominance. So I kind of hope that they don't, and that it's just a big close fight between lots of people. That would be ideal, but remains to be seen.
That would be a great season. I think, like I mentioned earlier, Toto kept on saying starting from zero again. Starting from zero, and this livery is basically starting from zero, isn't it? It's starting from that first kind of Mercedes, not the first kind of Mercedes look, but what we saw in the 2012, 2013, and 14. That iconic, what we've kind of come to like and know of that new like Mercedes look in the turbo hybrid era. So maybe they've just gone back to zero, back to what it was at the start of the turbo hybrid era, and here we are. And they've just done it again. And it's I will miss the black livery, because I thought it looked quite cool, but actually I think this will grow on me equally as quick, and it'll be good to see the silver arrows. Because actually, during the commentary of the races, when they went to that black livery, everyone kept on calling them the silver arrows, or the silver arrows out in front. It's like, well, they're no longer silver. So it'd be cool to get that commentary piece back in. And yeah, I think it looks real good. Well, there we have it. That was the W13. We've almost finished our car launches for this year. We've got a couple more to go. And hopefully in the next couple of days, we'll get to see some cars out on track and get to see what their renders look like to the actual cars themselves. And we'll be drawing some comparisons, and maybe we'll put a couple of photos on our Twitter page. But send us your thoughts or questions to us at RacePerMinute on Twitter, or you can get in touch with us at RacePerMinute.com. And if you're watching on YouTube, hello, thanks for watching. And you can leave a comment and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. If you've enjoyed this episode, then please give us a rating or a like wherever you get Race Per Minute, whether you listen on a podcast or again on YouTube. And if you really like what we do, then please consider subscribing for more wherever you're getting Race Per Minute. And if you really want to support the show and help keep the quality content coming and receive some lovely rewards, you can do by donating as little as £1 a month at patreon.com/RacePerMinute. That was the W13. They've taken a step back in time for the new classic livery we've come to expect. Alex, what's next on the list? I think we've got a few days, haven't we, until the next one?
We've got Alpine on Monday.
The pink Alpine.
Yeah, well, we'll
find
see
out.
if it's actually going to be pink. Be interesting to see how they put those two together, because pink and blue, that's a pretty complicated mashup to make, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see what they do with that, and obviously Otmar now being their new team principal, will be interesting to see if we hear from him. I think we will.
I'm sure we will. Yeah.
Wherever BWT goes, he seems to follow. It seems so.
Maybe he is BWT.
Yeah. And then we have Alfa Romeo, but they're doing it after Spain testing, aren't they? They're doing it sort of at the end of next week. The 27th they are.
And that's after the testing, isn't it? Because
it is, so not quite sure how that will work, but I don't know whether they'll do the Spain testing with their camo livery that they've supposedly been going around doing their initial shakedown with.
Yes, that makes sense, actually. Yeah. So maybe they'll just do the whole pre-season testing in camo livery. I reckon a couple of teams will have some camo liveries into pre-season testing. We know Red Bull have had it in the past, whether that's been white and black, that kind of special one they ran at the start of the turbo hybrid era. And then they had a blue and black kind of pixelated livery as well a couple of years ago, which was pretty cool. I always like to see what teams do to try and cover up their secrets. And it's even more important at the beginning of this year because there's so many secrets to cover up. So it's going to be interesting. Hopefully we get some photos of the first private test.
Yeah, not long to go before we get some information on that at the very least. So just 1 week, and we'll have hopefully seen some cars on track. But we'll find out then. So I guess we'll see you next week for Alpine.
See you then.